When I became a Christian, I had a real desire to teach those in high school about God, the Creator, that they had a purpose. Something was real important, that they needed to know, that someone loved them. That's why I find a lot of young people depressed these days, because they have no purpose. Evolution teaches that you are an accident. So I turned the tables. I went to the high school, one I used to attend, and I asked the principal if we could present the Bible the way it is. And yes, she allowed me to do that. I was quite surprised, because in the day-to-day, evolution is being taught as a fact, and creation isn't even allowed as an option. Well, I'll tell you, we've got, on our very first day, I expected 5 or 6, maybe Christians to show up. What we got instead was 25 young people coming for the purpose of hearing what the Bible had to say. We served pizza, of course, and that helped. Hi, I'm Peter from Breakneck Ministries, but now we're going to be going through the Bible in Genesis 1 and 6, and we're going to talk about the firmament. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the midst of the waters." And God made the firmament and divided it, the waters which were under the firmament, and the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. What was true is God said he did it, and it was so. And every time we read about creation, it's God spoke, which is amazing, because it's a spoken word that actually what brings everything into creation. So this is exciting. That's how powerful God is. But don't think about the natural. Think about the supernatural. God is one that is supernatural. Outside time, outside of matter, outside of anything that we can think of natural. He is supernatural. He is God. 1 and 8, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So on the second day, God created the heavens. So now we have a land, earth, which isn't really earth yet. It's just a water ball, basically. And it's divided, and there's water above, also in the heavens. And so we have that on the second day, third day. And God said, once again, we had that. God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. So we have here dry land appearing, right? And it comes up, whether God crushed the crust of the world to bring the mountains up. And the mountains, as they came up, the water pooled into an area where it would be landing. And God called the dry land earth, and gathered together of the waters called the seas. And God saw that it was good. Although we look at the earth today and it says it's good, it was created good. It was done right. God said so, and he did it, so it was good. And we have now the mountains coming up, the land higher than other parts, and we have seas developing by the pooling of the water. And so therefore we have something that declares the glory of God. In Psalm 19, it tells us, written by David, it says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork." So what we see by looking at the heavens and the earth, we see that God is real. It's all by faith when it comes to creation, even the Big Bang. Because you have to have faith in believing that everything was created by nothing. You take a building, you know it's got an architect, you know it's got a person who designs the structure of the building, and then the workers build it. Well, here God did it all, and he created the heavens and the earth, and he built the seas and the mountains and the firmament, the heavens, and that's what we have here in these days. We're going to see here in the next day, in verse 12, that the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after its kind, and the tree yielded fruit, and whose seed was in itself after his kind. and God saw that it was good. What we have now is God allowing it to form some grass, and it's yielding seed. And interesting, it says after his kind. It would be grass. It wouldn't be another plant. So it was after its kind. That's the thought here. And the tree yielded fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. But all these things were planted that was good, and it was after its kind. It didn't evolve into something different. So it has its own species. The idea of kind comes from the meaning to portion out or assort. It was groups of living organisms belonging to the same created kind if they had descended from the same ancestral gene pool. So it would have the same genetics. And so therefore we have things that are exactly the same. Now that doesn't mean it doesn't change in the way it looks or different species of that kind. For instance, you wouldn't get an apple tree from a blade of grass if it produced seed. That's what it's really saying, after its own kind. And that becomes kind of obvious, doesn't it? You'd think. So that was the third day. After the evening and the morning were the third day. Evening and the morning is important to realize that this is talking about time that was evening and morning, which is considered a 24-hour day, I believe. Don't want to get into the debate, as we won't. But what it tells us is that there's a distinct thing about what time it was, morning and evening. But as you notice, everything is good. Genesis 1:13, and the evening and the morning were the third day, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and years. And let's go one more verse here. And let them be lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, and the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. I like that little comment there, the way, and he also made the stars. I don't know about you, but every time I hope that we don't get winter. But we always get winter. Here in Canada, it's cold, and I dread it. Being in a wheelchair, if you watch previous videos, you know I'm in a wheelchair from an injury I had. And I dread the winter because wheels don't work well in wintertime. But you know what? Each time, each year, I hope it's not going to come. It never lets me down. It always comes. Gives us for signs, for seasons. In other words, a period of time in order that we can measure for days and for years. So what happens, the way the world works, is that it spins around 24 hours, takes to go a whole circle, 365 days in a year. And we know that. We can count on it. We have calendars made based upon it. It's designed by a designer who knew that we could count our days. How did he do that? Well, he had lights that one would be greater and one would be less. And the greater light would, of course, be the sun. The sun would give us brightness and light, and he made two great lights to rule the day. So we wake up in the morning and we have the sun during the day, and we somehow are able to count on how many hours we will have in a day. Throughout the year it varies, but at the same time, we know at this time of year in the wintertime we're not going to have much sunlight, and they can actually predict exactly when the sun will go down. And we have a lesser light during the evening. And that lesser light is the moon. And that's a quite amazing thing. It gives us a night. Can you imagine if it would go pitch black without the moon? No, so he gave us a lesser light that would shine upon the earth or at nighttime. And then what he does, he also puts the stars in there. And he places the stars. You know, we think and measure, evolutionists think and measure how distant away the stars are. And then they calculate by some calculations of how old the earth is. That's not what God did. See, he actually placed them there. He placed them there so we can know. And we can look up into heavens and say, wow, these stars are amazing. This must be happened all by accident. No, we don't say that. It happened by a creator who placed beautiful stars up in heaven. We have the Milky Way and the galaxies, and we can see and that some of these stars are even greater than our own star, the sun, which shines upon the earth. It's just enough heat to give us warmth. It's just enough light so that we can work during the day and get enough rest at night. It's all made perfectly, and the stars are for a purpose, that we can look up into the heavens and we can figure out where we are. We know when the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It doesn't actually move. We go around it, but it gives us indication by the earth movement of what time of day it is. He all planned that. That was perfect. And he said it was good. Why? For the purpose, because it was. It was created by a God who was good. And everything worked well. So in the evening and the morning were the fourth day, Genesis 1:19 tells us. So we're going to look again here. Genesis 1:20, it says, and God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature, and have life, and fowl that may fly above the earth, and the open firmament of heaven. So what this is saying here is that God had waters bring forth moving creatures, and it had life. This is how we get the fish in the sea. And of course, and fowl that may fly above the earth. He populated the earth with beauty, with animals. And I don't know if you ever watch those nature shows and you see the ones, especially the fish in the deepest part of the ocean. They have a unique color to them. It's something that even until they got high definition cameras have never been able to reveal the beauty of the fish that are way, way down in deep water, that they've never even been able to go so far that. But there's life. There's life there. And you look up into the skies and you can see the birds in the air and flying. And so many of us, I know a friend of mine who's a real bird watcher. That was what he did. His hobby was watching birds. And I thought, well, it's not a big deal. And then I went with him. And the beauty of the birds, and how perfectly the colors shine, and some of them are like a blackbird, aren't as exciting, but it's amazing that they can fly itself. A perfectly designed beast that can fly in the air, all different sizes, and each one, their wings were created in a manner that the small birds had small wings and could fly fast. The big birds, like an eagle, can soar beautifully in the breeze. It's just amazing how everything was created. To think all these things could happen by accident is just not possible. We see the beauty in God's creation. We see how wonderful he has made things. And you cannot, we're in what? The year that we have so much technology and we still don't know all the creatures both in the sea and in the air. We haven't even seen all the beauty. So we can look at the stars in the sky. We can look at the birds in the air. We can look at the fish in the sea. And we can see all these things. Well, they were good. They definitely are good. And created by a God in heaven. They were designed in their beauty specifically. And God knows each one of them. He knows all. The Bible tells us in Matthew how he knows each bird that falls to the ground. He knows each one that he cares for. So how much more we care for our lives? God cares for our lives. He takes care of each one of us, and we should never doubt him. We should all be knowing that he loves us and cares for each one of us. I have my own cat here you might see running around. His name is Darcy. He's a created being. We'll get into the ones who go on the earth. But I want to show you another verse here. There we go. And God created great whales and every living creature that moved, which the waters brought forth abundantly in their after their kind, and every winged fowl of his kind. And God saw that it was good. Original language, when he talks about the great whales, you can great living creatures, which means sea monsters. There was actually sea monsters at the time. Great, huge, deep monsters under the sea that people are kind of finding out about, but they can never see them. And they actually existed, and the Bible tells us in the original Hebrew language that there were great sea monsters that existed. There were great fish that existed, and many after their own kind. So a whale can't produce a bird. It can't evolve to the point over millions of years, and because things can't live unless they have the means to live. So if an animal doesn't have a means to eat, how will it survive one day? It just doesn't make sense. He has provided these creatures so that they actually have the ability to live right away. And 22, God blessed them, and saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and let the fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. So here God blesses them, and saying, being fruitful and multiply. So it gives them the ability to become offspring and have be fruitful. I mean, we all know what that means. Multiply, and the waters were filled, and the sea was filled with all these creatures, and more multiplied. In the air, the fowl multiplied, the birds expanded, and the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Creatures that are cattle after its kind, and every creeping thing, beasts of the earth after its kind, it was so. And God gave them life. And God said it was, let us make man in our own image. Well, we're going to get that next time. When I went to primary school when I was young, we opened up in prayer before the school began. Creation was taught, not in detail, but we would understand that God created the world and it made sense to us. Well, years later, they started teaching evolution. And evolution was confusing because they tried to integrate both and present both as a theory. Well, that motivated me when I was going through high school, because high school they eliminated creation and started really pushing what was called the theory of evolution. By the way, this is my cat. And what happened was that I was never really taught to respond to my creator. I kind of ignored going to church as a young person and thought it was all not important. It wasn't until my 20s that I actually became a Christian. Having said that, looking back, I began to think how important it was that somehow creation would get back into schools. It was totally eliminated. I would hand out tracts and Bibles outside of the school, and the principal would actually be very thankful. Even though I didn't do it on school property, she would actually come out and ask me what I was doing, and she would say, good, they need it. Eventually, I asked if I could go in and teach the Gospel of John to young people during lunch. We'd serve them some pizza and give them some pop, and they'd come in. And I wasn't only expecting like 5 or 6 Christian kids. What we got on the very first day of Taught Creation was 25 kids, and most of them, probably 90%, were non-believers. I was scared and excited at the same time. Being able to present to kids who do not know what it means, what creation's all about. And there's my cat again. Very nice. Okay. He wants to be the star of the show. We'll just keep rolling. So therefore, what I learned and taught them was the Bible. And the Bible was fantastic. And it showed them. And as we're going week by week and listening and reading the Bible, the crowds grew to the point where we couldn't even fit them all into the classroom.